Prerequisites to HACCP and SSOPs, presented by David L. A. Rawson, International HACCP Alliance, Chapter 2, 123foodhandler.com. Remember, HACCP is a food safety management system. It is not standalone. It's a system. So what is a system anyway? Well, Merriam-Webster defines system as a regularly interacting or independent group of items forming a unified whole, like a solar system, like a digestive system, like the System, an 80s pop duo, or, of course, the HACCP system. You can see here that sanitation is the foundation of the HACCP system. We take the requirements of 9 CFR 416, which is the sanitation requirements for meat and poultry, and we'll create SSOPs, or Sanitation Standard Operating Procedures. Implement proper sanitation by way of SSOPs. We will support our HACCP program. These elements here make up a system, a HACCP system, which could involve many other items in the prerequisite program. HACCP is built on a solid foundation of sanitation. Dropping big words around, prerequisite. What is a prerequisite anyway? Well, I think I talked about it last chapter, where it's something you do before you do something else. Like if you're going to take organic biochemistry to get a degree to become a doctor maybe, or a food scientist perhaps, you have to work your way through some minor classes like biology and chemistry first, so that when you look at organic biochemistry, you're ready to go. Well, prerequisites for HACCP are very similar. There's things that you're going to want to do before you start production, before you start working with the food. So let's look at the definition. A range of programs that are necessary to set the stage for a HACCP-based system and to provide an ongoing support for these systems, prerequisite programs. Trying to lay it out here for you. Prerequisite programs for USDA or meat poultry facilities are going to be heavily based on sanitation. And the sanitation regulation, again, is 9 CFR 416. The USDA is the regulatory authority over meat poultry. Consider reviewing the FDA guidance document or regulation for sanitation or for good manufacturing practices. It's recently been updated. Might be something you can consider maybe as a best practice. It goes into a little more detail. Check out 21 CFR 117 subpart B. I've attached a copy in the chapter notes. Make sure you take a look at it. So prerequisite programs are based on sanitation and good manufacturing practices. Back in Chapter 1, we learned about the National Advisory Committee for Microbiological Criteria in Food. And they lay out a lot of definitions for this stuff. Remember, they were a big part of the development of the 7 HACCP principles we still use today. So they've defined prerequisite programs as providing the basic environmental and operating conditions that are necessary for the production of safe, wholesome foods. Kind of another way of looking at it, the way I kind of see it here, is that prerequisites take care of the people and take care of the environment. So when we move the food into this people and environment scenario, when that trifecta comes together, people, food, environment, we're not worried because we have these sanitation protocol, prerequisite programs that support the movement of the food, which is going to be under the HACCP program. So there's a lot of things we can do to get set up to be prepared for when the star of the show comes in. What's the star of the show? Well, that's the food. We sell food. We make people happy. We are in the hospitality business, making people feel good and nourished and happy because they had a good meal. And we want to make sure we're producing safe, wholesome foods. And a good way to do that would be to set up these prerequisite programs. Here are some examples of some common prerequisite programs. Facility program, a production equipment program, a cleaning and sanitation program, which would be required under the USDA regulation for HACCP. We would need to base our HACCP production off sanitation requirements of 9 CFR 416. We've seen that already. Build into it a chemical control program, pest control program, have a hygiene program, have a training program, have a supplier control or approval program, setting specifications for our suppliers, and have a traceability and recall program, being able to look forward and back one step to identify where a product is if it becomes potentially hazardous or hazardous to someone's health. These are some common examples of prerequisite programs. I'm sure you could come up with a bunch more of prerequisite programs we could implement and manage and make sure that we're producing safe foods. Remember, it's the foundation. It's controlling the people. It's controlling the environment. So when we bring the food into the place, we're not worried. So here's some other things we could consider. A consumer complaint management program. I've dropped a guidance document for this in the chapter notes. Be sure to look at that. And under USDA regulations for meat and poultry, sanitation standard operating procedures, or SSOPs, are required. Environmental monitoring program will be somewhere we're looking for organisms like Listeria, Salmonella, maybe E. coli in the environment, where we're producing ready-to-eat foods. A ready-to-eat food that's exposed to the environment prior to packaging, we'd want to get an environmental monitoring program in place. I just told you it's required for SSOPs for meat and poultry facilities. SSOP sanitation, standard operating procedures. I want to go over the basic elements of an SSOP. What I'd want to do is know what it covers. What does this SSOP cover? How often is it required that we do this activity or this procedure? The policy or procedure should include a step-by-step instruction on how to perform the activity correctly, including corrections, what to do when things aren't performed correctly. There should be a record-keeping program in place, and who is responsible for the activity or the procedure. SSOPs, required under meat and poultry regulation. You'll see it in detail in 9 CFR 416. All right, let's go back through some of those areas where we're going to want to set up prerequisite programs, like the facilities. We'll look at the layout, the buildings, the premises, the equipment, and the personnel movement. Create policies, procedures, programs to minimize the transfer of pathogens, transfer of allergens, minimize adulteration of the foods we work with by looking at the layout, looking at segregation, looking at where we have these clean zones and unclean zones, where we have wet areas and dry areas, and how's our air handling. These are some of the things we'll look at when we consider our facilities. Next, we'll look at our personnel. Of course, their health and hygiene. How's our disease control program and our personal hygiene program, which includes dress code? How are we managing and maintaining hygienic practices, handling of materials, movement in the facility? How's our education and training in regard to our personnel and health and hygiene? You see, our people may cause all 3 areas of contaminants or categories of contaminants to come into play. Poor employee practices may result in microbiological contamination. Poor employee practices may result in physical contamination of product. And poor employee practices may result in chemical contamination of products or foods. So just to remind you what we're doing again, we're taking a look at some of the areas where we could create some prerequisite programs, some policies, procedures, programs. How about we look at our production equipment? Is it of sanitary design? Is it does it require maintenance? Do we have a scheduled maintenance program? Does this equipment require calibration? If so, when and where is it applicable? And are we working with the manufacturer's standard or scientifically known standards for calibrating this equipment? Production equipment. So it's important we create a program or a policy where we're controlling our raw materials, our ingredients, establishing written specifications, including certificate of analysis or letters of guarantee, and sometimes we might even establish some type of certificate of conformance policy. These supplier approval programs are going to be so important. Go back all the way to the farm and helps us maintain safety all the way to the table. Let's get an inspection and appropriate storage program when we receive all these raw materials and ingredients, being sure to segregate, being sure to be mindful of cross-contamination, cross-contact. So pretty important we take a look here at a comparison of some terminology I've been using. Cross-contamination is the inadvertent transfer of bacteria or other contaminants, including chemical contaminants, from one surface, substance, etc., to another, especially because of unsanitary handling procedures. But when we look at cross-contact, we kind of isolate out one particular contaminant. It occurs when an allergen is inadvertently transferred from one food containing an allergen to another food, or maybe a surface, and that does not contain the allergen. Cooking does not reduce or eliminate the chances of a person with a food allergy having a reaction to the food eaten. Cross-contamination, cross-contact. Know those. Hang in there with me. A few more areas we want to look at to create prerequisite programs, to create policy, to create procedures, to ensure that the environment, to ensure that the people are ready to produce foods. One area we call it sanitation environmental monitoring. We want to have written procedures, policies, and schedules for a master cleaning schedule. Under USDA regulation, that's pretty much going to be mandated. There might be a couple other things you're going to want to do if you have ready-to-eat foods, like environmental monitoring, or maybe checking the effectiveness of your cleaning with some type of ATP swabs or other microbial testing to see if you're actually cleaning. All right, last area we'll look at, traceability and recall program. So let's make sure we have a crisis response plan and team. Make sure we have effective lot coding records program for tracking all of our distribution, knowing where products are at all time, so that in real recall and in mock recalls we can track product. I've attached a USDA recall guidance document in the chapter notes. Be sure to take a look at that. Don't forget there are specific regulatory requirements for meat and poultry producers. FSIS, Food Safety Inspection Service, has sanitation performance standards are laid out in 9 CFR 416, 1 through 6. There are additional requirements, SSOPs, which I'll be covering in a minute. SSOPs for meat, poultry. The requirements are laid out in 9 CFR 416, 11 through 17, which requires written SSOPs for meat and poultry products. SSOPs must identify procedures to prevent direct product contamination. A little more detail here for you. The SSOPs for meat and poultry shall, when you see the word shall, it means it's mandatory. You got to do it. Shall include procedures to be performed, what individuals are responsible to perform these activities, and the frequency of the activities or each task in your policies, in your procedures, in your SSOPs. So a little more detail, keeping it going a little further. So the SSOPs must identify daily pre-op procedures. Must identify daily operational procedures. These policies, these procedures must be signed and dated. The establishments must initiate corrective action and preventive actions to ensure that if we do fail, we fix it, or strategies to prevent failing. Don't forget there's going to be daily records that must be maintained with regard to sanitation. Proper implementation of prerequisite programs simplifies the development of your HACCP plan. The more we do with our prerequisite programs, the more we control with our sanitation, supply chain, facilities, these various programs, the less burden on our HACCP plan. So we're making our way through this prerequisite and SSOP chapter. Remember, these are things that are going to support the foundation for our program. So let's look at a few more things. Bear with me, we're almost through. Prerequisite programs should be well documented with written SOPs, adhered to by all employees, reviewed and revised as necessary. And are they doing the things we're trying to accomplish? Are they effective at accomplishing our objectives? Maintaining a sanitary environment. Take a look at your prerequisite programs. You may need to rebuild them. You may need to re-communicate them. You may need to conduct some training. You may need to just pop into a room, lean against the wall, watch the employees, see if they're adhering to these policies, procedures, these programs. Got into this a little bit earlier, but here's another way of looking at these prerequisite programs or these policies, documents that kind of lay out what we're going to do. So let's take a look. What procedures should be performed? At what frequency? Who's responsible to perform these activities? What actions should be taken? A procedure, if it's not performed as required, do we have that? If there's an unexpected result or outcome, do we have something that brings us back in control? These, again, are some ways of ensuring that our policies, our procedures are clear and followed by all. Major component, major thing that's going to establish that whether you're going to be successful with this stuff or not is if you get employee buy-in. And the better chance of getting employee buy-in is training them, teaching them why we do the things we do. And if we fail at doing the things we're doing with regard to food safety, that could put us out of business, could hurt someone, could kill someone. So we need a good employee training program. We need a continuing education program. And we need to make sure that they understand and follow the assigned tasks, the assigned policies, making sure that we provide time and materials for effective training, and make sure that we verify and review the efficacy of the training by reviewing performance of the task or activities that we previously or recently trained. By, like I said earlier, dipping into a room, standing against the wall, and just taking a look, watching your people, seeing what they're doing. That would determine whether we need more training or the training has been effectively received. With HACCP, there's this element of verification that we always have to kind of prove or show that the things we say we're doing, we're actually doing, and the things that we say we're doing are actually good enough. All right, so this verification even applies to my prerequisite programs, like a periodic review of our policies, taking a look at, just the monitoring documents, corrective action documents with regard to the policy, to regard to the prerequisite program, ensuring that the program is operating in the manner it should be, and should we make any changes? Remember, the better job we do at these prerequisite programs, these policies, these procedures for sanitation, the less burden that is on our HACCP program, and the less likely that our food production will have issues with regard to adulterants, all biological, chemical, and physical verification of our prerequisite programs. So make sure you establish a verification policy or procedure. Is the SSOP or SOP being performed in the manner it's intended? Is procedure being monitored? Do we have records proving that we're actually doing the activity? Is there some type of audit of the activity? And is there a way that if we need to, that we can revise the program? So build that in as a verification element. So make sure you have the proper tools and resources and equipment for your people. Make sure that the personnel are properly trained, that they can actually perform the task effectively. Make sure that you have an adequate system for monitoring and storing data to prove that, in fact, these prerequisites that we're claiming we're doing, these foundational items that support our HACCP program, will have records proving that we did it, we're doing it, we've done it. So this is a nice little side-by-side comparison of prerequisite programs versus HACCP plans. So if we look at the prerequisite programs, they're intended to deal indirectly with food safety issues. These prerequisite programs, sanitation programs, can work across multiple product lines. And more than likely, failures in these areas they're not going to lead to food safety issues. So there's minimal risk, but I mean there is risk if failures of prerequisite programs. And then HACCP, though, directly involved with the food, deals solely with food safety. It's specific to the product process, the food process, the ingredients process, and deviations from processes are considered hazards. I mean, they're considered potential areas where someone could get sick, injured, or die. So we need somebody with knowledge, someone with understanding with meat and poultry, products, processes, to determine is it a prerequisite program or a HACCP. And depending on the results of our hazard analysis, the identification of control measures, some activities normally addressed in prerequisite programs may be included in a HACCP plan or may be better suited to be in our HACCP plan. So that's why we need someone knowledgeable. We need someone to take this training as a catalyst and move through science, move through technology, and understand the details, understanding every detail of everything you do all the time. You're the HACCP coordinator. We're counting on you. HACCP is a food safety management system. It is not standalone. A HACCP system is built on a solid foundation of sanitation. For meat and poultry, the regulation is 9 CFR 416. Prerequisites to HACCP and SSOPs. We just covered a bunch of stuff. This concludes Chapter 2. Please complete the chapter quiz and review all chapter attachments